Fragilities, thank you so much for the follow. Testing. Testing. 1, 2, 3. How is my voice compared to the rain and such? Is it too low? Or is it just right? Hi, Damien. Thank you so much for the look, dear. It's perfect. Hi, Raven. Hi, sweetheart. Well, we are starting today back to the beginning, actually. For some much needed reading. I've missed it. I finally found a book that we can read. This is what I will be doing in the early stream time. And I know it has been greatly missed. Which is understandable. It is very much understandable. Are you guys ready? Today, we're gonna read a book called The Way of Shadows. The perfect killer has no friends, only targets. No worries, Robert. Then you come here for a book reading. We're reading The Way of Shadows by Brent Weeks. And let's start. A white snake slid into the table with a thump. Kylar barely had time to register what it was before it struck at his face. He saw its mouth open, huge fangs glittering. He was moving back, but too slowly. Then the snake disappeared, and Kylar was falling backwards off the stool. He landed flat on his back, but bounced up to his feet in an instant. Blint was holding the snake behind the head. He had grabbed it out of the air while it was striking. Do you know what this is, Kylar? It's a white asp. It was one of the most deadly snakes in the world. They rarely grew longer than a man's forearm, but those they bit died within seconds. No, it's the price of failure. Chapter 1. Azoth squatted in the alley, cold mud squishing through his bare toes. He stared at the narrow space beneath the wall, trying to get his nerve up. The sun wouldn't come up for hours, and the tavern was empty. Most taverns in the city had dirt floors, but this part of the Warrens had been built over marshland, and not even drunks wanted to drink standing ankle-deep in mud. So the tavern had been raised a few inches on stilts and floored with stout bamboo poles. Coins sometimes dropped through the gaps, in the bamboo, and the crawl space was too small for most people to go after them. The gills' bigs was too big, and the littles were too scared to squeeze into suffocating darkness, shared with spiders and cockroaches, hi Ginger, and rats, and the wicked half-wild tomcat the owner kept, flattening you every time a patron walked overhead. It had been Azoth's favorite spot for a year, but he wasn't as small as he used to be. Last time he got stuck and spent hours panicking until it rained and the ground softened beneath him enough that he could dig himself out. That voice, it's somehow making me feel a little better. Aw, you are most welcome, Robert. It was muddy now, and there would be no patrons. Excuse me. And Athos had seen the tomcat leave. It should be fine. Besides, Rat was collecting guild dues tomorrow, and Athos didn't have 4 coppers. He didn't even have 1, so there wasn't much choice. Rat wasn't understanding, and he didn't know his own strength. Littles had died from his beatings. Pushing aside mounds of mud, Azoth lay on his stomach. The dank earth soaked his thin, filthy tunic instantly. He'd had to work fast. He was skinny, and if he caught a chill, the odds of getting better weren't good. Scooting through the darkness, he began searching for the telltale metallic gleam. A couple of lamps were still burning in the tavern, so light filtered through the gaps, illuminating the mud and standing water in strange rare rectangles. Heavy marsh mist climbed the shafts of light only to fall over and over again. Spiderwebs draped across Azoth's face and broke, and he felt a tingle on the back of his neck. Ooh! He froze. No, it was his imagination. He exhaled slowly. Something glimmered, and he grabbed his first copper. He slithered to the unfinished pine beam he had gotten stuck under last time, and shoveled mud away until water filled the depression. The gap was still so narrow that he had to turn his head sideways to squeeze underneath it. Holding his breath and pushing his face into the slimy water, he began the slow crawl. His head and shoulders made it through, but then a stub of a branch caught the back of his tunic, tearing the cloth and jabbing his back. He almost cried out and was instantly glad he hadn't. Through a wide space between bamboo poles, Azoth saw a man seated at the bar, still drinking. In the Warrens, you had to judge people quickly. Even if you had quick hands like Azoth did, when you stole every day, you were bound to get caught eventually. All merchants hid the gill rats who stole from them. If they wanted to have any goods left to sell, they had to. The trick was picking the ones who'd smack you so you didn't try their booth next time. It's in the title, sweetie. There were others who beat you so badly you never had a next time. The Way of Shadows. Ginger. It's called The Way of Shadows.
Pika pika. Choo!
Jay Cliff, thank you so much. The Way of Shadows is the perfect killer.
Yes.
Has no friends, only targets. Jay Cliff, thank you so much for the raid, dear. I haven't read the backside, but I can if you want after this.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for the shout outs to Damien and Jay Cliff. How was your stream, Jay Cliff? Asa thought he saw something kind and sad and lonely in this lanky figure. He was perhaps 30, with a scraggly blonde beard and a huge sword on his hip. "How could you abandon me?" the man whispered so quietly, Athos could barely distinguish the words. He held a flagon in his left hand and cradled something Athos couldn't see in his right. "After all the years I've served you, how could you abandon me now?" "Oh, just so sorry." "Nice. Is it because of Wanda?" "Oh, of course. I have a phone call. My mom is calling." Jesus. Moms, you gotta love them. "Is it because of Wanda?" There was an itch on Asa's calf. He ignored it. It was just his imagination again. He reached behind his back to free his tunic. He needed to find his coins and get out of here. Something heavy dropped onto the floor above Azoth and slammed his face into the water, driving the breath from his lungs. He gasped and nearly inhaled water. Why, Durso Blent, you never fail to surprise. The weight above Azoth said. Nothing was visible of the man through the gaps except a drawn dagger. He must have dropped from the rafters. Hey, I'm all for calling a bluff, but you should have seen Wanda when she figured out. You weren't going to save her. Made me damn near bawl my eyes out. The lanky man turned. His voice was slow, broken. I killed 6 men tonight. Are you sure you want to make it 7? Asa slowly caught up with what they'd been saying. The lanky man was the wet boy, Durso Blent. A wet boy was like an assassin. In the way a tiger is like a kitten. Among wet boys, Durso Blent was indisputable the best. Or, as the head of Azoth Guild said, at least the disputes didn't last long. And I thought Durso Blent looked kind. The itch on Azoth's calf itched again. It wasn't his imagination. There was something crawling up the inside of his trousers. Oi, oi, oi. It felt big, but not as big as a cockroach. Azoth's fear identified the weight. A white wolf spider. Its poison liquefied flesh in a slowly spreading circle. If it bit, even with a healer, the best an adult could hope for was to lose a limb. A gill rat wouldn't be so lucky. Blent, you'll be lucky if you don't cut your head off after all you've been drinking. Just in time, I've been watching. You've had 8 flagons, and I had 4 before that. Azoth didn't move. If he jerked his legs together to kill the spider, the water would splash and the men would know he was there. Even if Durso Blent had looked kind, that was an awful big sword. And Azoth knew better than to trust grown-ups. You're bluffing, the man said. But there was fear in his voice. I don't bluff, Durso Blent said. Why don't you invite your friends in? The spider crawled up to Azoth's inner thigh. Trembling, he pulled his tunic up in back and stretched the waist of his trousers, making a gap and praying the spider would crawl for it. Above him, the assassin reached 2 fingers up to his lips and whistled. Azoth didn't see Durso move, but the whistle ended in a gurgle, and a moment later the assassin's body tumbled to the floor. Excuse me. There were yells as the front and back doors burst open. The boards flexed and jumped. Concentrating on not jostling the spider, Azoth didn't move, even when another dropping body pushed his face briefly underwater. The spider crawled across Azoth's butt and then onto his thumb. Slowly, Azoth drew his hand around so he could see it. His fears were right. It was a white wolf spider. Its legs as long as Azoth's thumb. Oh my gosh. Ooh. He flung it away convulsively and rubbed his fingers, making sure he hadn't been bitten. He reached for the splintered branch holding his tunic and broke it off. The sound was magnified in the sudden silence above. Azoth couldn't see anyone through the gap. A few feet away, something was dripping from the boards into a puddle. It was too dark to see what it was, but it didn't take much imagination to guess. The silence was eerie. If any of the men walked across the floor, groaning boards and flexing bamboo would have announced it. The entire fight had lasted maybe 20 seconds, and Azoth was sure no one had left the tavern. Had they all killed each other? He was chilled, and not just from the water. Death was no stranger in the Warrens. But Azoth had never seen so many people die so fast and so easily. Even taking extra care to look out for the spider, in a few minutes, Azoth had gathered 6 coppers. If he were braver, he would have looted the bodies in the tavern. But Azoth couldn't believe Durso Blint was dead. Maybe he was a demon, like the other gill rats said. Maybe he was standing outside, waiting to kill Azoth for spying on him. Chest tight with fear, Azoth turned and scooted toward his hole. 6 coppers were good. Dues were only 4, so he could buy bread tomorrow to share with Jarl and Dolgo. He was a foot from the opening when something bright flashed in front of his nose. It was so close, it took a moment to come into focus. It was Durso Blint's huge sword, and it was stuck through the floor all the way into the mud, barring Azoth's escape. Just above, Azoth on the other side of the floor. Durso Blint whispered, "Never speak of this. Understand? I've done worse than killing children." The sword disappeared, and Azoth scrambled out into the night. He didn't stop running for miles. Oh wow. First dealing with a spider in tight spaces, and then this? I am watching Raven's Roost watching you. Oh no. It's the circle. Chapter 2. coppers. 4. This isn't 4. Rat's face was so rage red, his pimples only showed as a scattering of white dots.
Yes! Yes!
It's a test? Oh. He grabbed Jarl's threadbare tunic and lifted him off the ground. Azos ducked his head. He couldn't watch. This is 4. Rat shouted, spit flying, as his hand slapped across Jarl's face. The bot is being weird. Why is the bot being weird? It could be because it's not centered. Oh, you mean the other bot? Yeah. What is his name? Chatbot. It is actually because I did not start it, the bot. Try again. No, it's because I'm using two different. I'm using a chatbot and I'm using the awesome shout out.
Yes! Yes!
There we go. The chatbot to provide the links and shout out to do the visuals.
Yes! Yes!
Don't forget J-Cliff. Ginger place.
Yes! Yes!
Thank you. Now where were we? Excuse me. This is 4, Rat shouted, spit flying, as his hand slapped across Jarl's face. Azos realized it was a performance, not the beating. Rat was definitely hitting Jarl, but he was hitting him with an open hand. It was louder that way. Rat wasn't even paying attention to Jarl. He was watching the rest of the guild, enjoying their fear. Who's next? Rat asked, dropping Jarl. Azor stepped forward quickly so Rat wouldn't kick his friend. At 16, Rat was already as big as a man and he had fat, which made him unique among the slave-born. Azoth held out his 4 coppers. "8, Puke," Rat said, taking the 4 from Azoth's hand. "8? You gotta pay for Doll Girl too." Azoth looked around for help. Some of the bigs shifted and looked at each other, but no one said a word. "She's too young," Azoth said. "Littles don't pay dues till they're 8. Attention shifted to Doll Girl, who was sitting in the dirty alley. She noticed the looks and withered, shrinking into herself. Doll Girl was tiny with huge eyes. But beneath the grime, her features were as fine and perfect as her namesake's. "I say she's 8, unless she says different." Rat leered. "Say it, Doll Girl, say it, or I'll beat up your boyfriend." Doll Girl's big eyes got bigger, and Rat laughed. Azoth didn't protest. Didn't point out that Doll Girl was mute. Rat knew. Everyone knew. But Rat with the fist, he only answered to Jalil, and Jalil wasn't here. Rat pulled Azoth close and lowered his voice. "Why don't you join my pretty boys, Azo? You'll never pay dues again." Azoth tried to speak, but his throat was so tight that he only squeaked. Rat laughed again, and everyone joined him. Some enjoying Azoth's humiliation, some just hoping to put Rat in a good mood before their turn came. Black hatred stabbed through him. Azoth hated Rat, hated the guild, hated himself. He cleared his throat to try again. Rat caught his eye and smirked. Rat was big, but he wasn't stupid. He knew how far he was pushing Azoth. He knew Azoth would crumble, afraid just like anyone else. Azoth spat a wad of phlegm onto Rat's face. "Go bugger yourself, Ratty Fatty." There was an eternity of stunned silence. A golden moment of victory. Azoth thought he could hear jaws dropping. Sanity was just starting to reassert itself when Rat's fist caught him on the ear. Black spots blotted out the world as he hit the ground. He blinked up at Rat, whose black hair glowed like a halo as it blocked the noon sun, and knew he was going to die. "Rat! Rat, I need you!" Azoth rolled over and saw Jalil emerging from the guild's building. His pale skin was beaded with sweat, though the day wasn't hot. He coughed unhealthily. "Rat, I say now!" Rat wiped his face. Seeing his rage cool so suddenly was almost more frightening than seeing its sudden heat. His face cleared and he smiled at Azoth. Just smiled. "Hey ho, J.O., Azoth said. so, Jarl said, coming to join Azoth and Dalgo. You know, you're about as smart as a box of hair. They'll be calling him Ratty Fatty behind his back for years. He wanted me to be one of his girls, Azoth said. They were propped against a wall several blocks away, sharing the stale loaf Azoth had bought. The smells of baking, though less intense this late in the day, covered at least some of the smells of sewage, rotting garbage piled on the banks of the river, and rancid bite of the urine and brains of the tanneries. If Suran architecture was all bamboo and rice fiber walls and screens, Cenarian architecture was rougher, heavier, lacking the studied simplicity of Suran design. If Elitarian architecture was all granite and pine, Cenarian architecture was less formidable, lacking the deliberate durability of Elitarian structures. If Orsini architecture was airy spires and soaring arches, Cenarian architecture only soared above 1 story in a few noble manses on the east side. Cenarian buildings were everything squat and dank and cheap and low, especially in the Warrens. A material that cost twice as much was never used, even if it lasted 4 times as long. Cenarians didn't think long term because they didn't live long term. Their buildings frequently incorporated bamboo and rice fiber, both of which grew nearby, and pine and granite, which were not too far away, but there were no Cenarian style. The country had been conquered too many times over the centuries to pride itself on anything but survival. In the Warrens, there wasn't even pride. Oh, I catch your reading time stream. Woohoo! Yeah, you did, Pribsy. And welcome. Azoth absently ripped the loaf into thirds, then scowled. He made 2 about the same size and 1/3 smaller. He put one of the bigger pieces on his leg and handed the other big piece to Dollgirl, who followed him like a shadow. He was about to hand the small piece to Jarl when he saw Dollgirl's face pucker in disapproval. Azoth sighed and took the small piece for himself. Jarl didn't even notice. Better one of his girls than that, Jarl said. I won't end up like Bim. So once Jalil buys review, Rat will be our guild head. You're 11. 5 years till you get review. You'll never make it. Rat make Bim look lucky compared to you. So what do I do, y'all? Ordinarily, this was Azoth's favorite time. He was with 2 people he didn't have to be afraid of, and he was silencing the instant voice of hunger. Now the bread tasted like dust. He stared into the market, not even seeing the fishmonger beating her husband. Jarl smiled, his teeth brilliant against his black, late giant skin. If I tell you a secret, can you keep it quiet? Azoth looked from side to side and leaned in. The loud crunching of bread and smacking of lips beside him stopped him. Oh, you have a good night's sleep, okay, Raven? And thank you so much for being here. The loud crunching of bread and smacking of lips beside him stopped him. Well, I can. I'm not sure about Doll Girl. I see. Hi, Yor. Hi, sweetie. Oh, that's makes me happy. You thought you could be sneaky? Nah. I would notice you instantly.
Yes. Yes.
How are you, dear? Bear is one of my special people. I hold him dearly to my heart. Is Simmons here as well? Or is it just you, dear? No worries. I'm just happy you stopped by. Well, I know you were working. That's why I pinged you, because last time I was doing the reading, you guys loved it while you were working. So that's why I pinged you. All right, let's get cracking. They both turned toward where she sat. Gnawing on the heel of the loaf. The combination of the crumbs stuck to her face, and her scowl of outrage made them howl with laughter. Azoth rubbed her blonde head, and when she kept scowling, pulled her close. She fought against him, but when he let his arm drop, she didn't scoot away. She looked at Jarl expectantly. Thank you. I would miss it otherwise. I always love to listen to your readings while I work. Yeah, I know, sweetie. I know. That's why I pinged you. Jarl lifted his tunic and removed the rag he had tied around his body as a sash. I won't be like the others, Azo. I'm not just going to let life happen to me. I'm gonna get out. He opened the sash. Tucked within its folds were a dozen coppers, 4 silvers, and impossibly 2 gold gunders. 4 years. 4 years I've been saving. He dropped 2 more coppers into the sash. You mean all the times rats slapped you around for not making your dues, you've had this? Jarl smiled, and slowly Azoth understood. The beatings were a small price to pay for hope. After a while, most guild rats withered and let life beat them. They became animals, or they went crazy like Azoth had today and got themselves killed. Looking at that treasure, part of Azoth wanted to strike Jarl, grab the sash and run. With that money, he could get out, get clothes to replace his rags, and pay apprentice fees somewhere, anywhere, maybe even with Durso Blind, as he told Jarl and Dolgirl so many times. Then he saw Dolgirl. He knew how she looked at him if he stole that sash full of life. If any of us make it out of the Warrens, it'll be you, Jarl. You deserve it. You have a plan. Always, Jarl said. He looked up, his brown eyes bright. I want you to take it, Azo. As soon as we find out where Dursoblint lives, we're going to get you out, all right? Azoth looked at the pile of coins. 4 years. Dozens of beatings. Not only did he not know if he would give that much for Jarl, but he also thought of stealing it from him. He couldn't hold back hot tears. He was so ashamed. He was so afraid of Rat, afraid of Dursoblint, always afraid. But if he got out, he could help Jarl, and Blind would teach him to kill. Azoth looked up at Jarl, not daring. Daring to look at Dolgirl for fear of what might be in her big brown eyes. I'll take it. He knew who he'd kill first. Hi, H.C. Pingvini. Oh, this stream sounds very cozy. Well, that is the plan. That is the plan. Hi, Lance. Chapter 3. Dursoblint pulled himself on top of the small estate's wall and watched the guard pass. The perfect guard, Durso thought. A bit slow, lacking imagination, and dutiful. He took his 39 steps, stopped at the corner, planted his halberd, scratched his stomach under his gambeson, checked in all directions, then walked on. 35, 36. Durso slipped out of the man's shadow and eased himself over the edge of the walkway. He held on by his fingertips. Now, he dropped and hit the grass just as the guard thumped the butt of his halberd on the wood walkway. He doubted the guard would have hurt him anyway, but paranoia begat perfection in the wit boy's trade. The yard was small and the house not much bigger. It was built on the Suran design, with translucent rice paper walls. Bold cypress and white cedar formed the doors and arches, and cheaper local pine had been used for the frame and the floors. It was Spartan, like all Suran houses, and that fit General Aegon's military background and his ascetic personality. More than that, it fit his budget. Despite the general's many successes, King David had not rewarded him well, which was part of why the wet boy had come. Durso found an unlocked window on the second floor. The general's wife was asleep in the bed. They weren't so Suran, excuse me, as to sleep on woven mats. They were, however, poor enough that the mattress was stuffed with straw rather than feathers. The general's wife was a plain woman, snoring gently, and sprawled more in the middle than to one side of the bed. The covers on the side she was facing had been disturbed. The wet boy slid into the room, using his talent to soften the sound of his footsteps on the hardwood floor. Curious. A quick glance confirmed that the general hadn't just come from a nocturnal conjugal visit. They actually shared the room. Perhaps he was even poorer than people thought. Durso's brow furrowed under his mask. It was a detail he didn't need to know. He drew the short, poisonous knife and walked towards the bed. She'd never feel a thing. He stopped. The woman was turned toward the disturbed covers. She'd been sleeping close to her husband before he got up. Not on the far side of the bed, the way a woman merely doing her marital duties would. It was a love match. After her murder, Aileen Gunder had planned to offer the general a quick remarriage to a rich noblewoman. But this general, who'd married a low-born woman for love, would react quite differently to his wife's murder than a man who married for ambition. That idiot! The prince was so consumed with ambition that he thought everyone else was too. The wet boy sheathed his knife and stepped into the hall. He still had to know where the general stood immediately. Damn it, man, King David's dying. I'd be surprised if he's got a week left. Whoever had spoken was mostly right. The wet boy had given the king his final dose of poison tonight. By dawn, he would be dead, leaving a throne in contention between one man who was strong and just and another who was weak and corrupt. The underworld, Sarkage, was not disinterested in the outcome. The voice had come from the receiving room downstairs. The wet boy hurried to the end of the hall. The house was so small that the receiving room doubled as the study. He had a perfect view of the two men. General Brand Aegon had a graying beard, close-trimmed hair that he didn't comb, and a jerky way of moving, keeping his eyes on everything. He was thin and sinewy, his legs slightly bowed from a life in the saddle. The man across from him was Duke Regnus Geyer. The wing-backed chair creaked as he shifted his weight. He was a huge man, both tall and wide. A little of his bulk was fat. He folded ringed fingers on his belly. Plots within plots. Yeah, maybe, perhaps. By the Knight's Angels, I could kill them both and end the Nine's worries right now. Are we deceiving ourselves, Brant? Duke Geyer asked. The general didn't answer immediately. My lord. No, Brant. I need your opinion as a friend, not as a vassal. Or vassal. Potato. Verso crept closer. He drew the throwing knife slowly, carefully, with the poisoned edges. If we do nothing, the general said, Elaine Gunder will become king. He's a weak, foul, and faithless man. The Sarkage already owns the Warrens. The king's patrols won't even leave the main roads. And you know all the reasons that only bound to get worse. The Death Games entrenched the Sarkage. Elaine doesn't have the will or the inclination to oppose the Sarkage now, while we can still root them out. So are we deceiving ourselves in thinking that you would be a better king? Not at all, and the throne is yours by right. Blint almost smiled. The underworld's lords, the Sarkage 9, agreed with every word, which was why Blint was making sure Regnus Geyer didn't become king. And tactically, we could do it with minimal bloodshed. Duke Vesseros is out of the country. My own regiment is in the city. The men believe in you, my lord. We need a strong king. A good king. We need you, Regnus. Duke Geyer looked at his hands. And Elaine's family? They'll be part of the minimal bloodshed? The general's voice was quiet. You want the truth? Yes. Even if we don't order it, one of our men will kill them to protect you. Even if it meant hanging. They believe in you that much. Duke Geyer breathed. So the question is, does the good of many in the future outweigh the murder of a few now? How long has it been since I had such qualms? Durso barely stifled an overpowering urge to throw the daggers. The suddenness of his rage shook him. What was that about? It was Regnus. The man reminded him of another king he once served. A king worthy of it. I am very sorry, guys, but I have someone at the door. I will be right back. I am back. Very sorry about that, guys. Now where were we? Oh yeah, the Duke Gaia was asking, so the question is, does the good of many in the future outweigh the murder of a few now? That is for you to answer, my lord, General Aegon said. But, if I may, is the question really so philosophical? What do you mean? You still love Nalia, don't you? Nalia was Elaine Gunder's wife. Ragnar looked stricken. I was betrothed to her for 10 years, Brent. We were each other's first lovers. My lord, I'm sorry, the general said. It's not my... No, Brent, I never speak of it. As I decide whether to be a man or a king. Let me. He breathed deeply. It's been 15 years since Nalia's father broke our betrothal and married her to that dog, Elaine. I should be over it. I am. Except when I have to see her with her children, I have to imagine her sharing a bed with Elaine Gunder. The only joy my marriage has given me is my son Logan. And I can scarce believe her own has been better. My lord, given the involuntary nature of both of your weddings, could you not divorce Katrina and marry? No. Ragnar shook his head. If the Queen's children live, they will always be a threat to my son, whether I exile them or adopt them. Nalia's eldest boy is 14. Too old to forget that he was destined for a throne. The right is on your side, my lord, and who knows but that answers unforeseen may arise to these problems once you sit on the throne. Regnus nodded unhappily, obviously knowing he held hundreds or thousands of lives in his hands. Not knowing he held his own as well. If he plots rebellion, I'll kill him now. I swear by the Night's Angels. I serve only the Star Cage now. And myself, always myself. May generations unborn forgive me. Regnus Geyer said, tears gleaming in his eyes. But I will not commit murder for what may be. Brent, I cannot. I will swear fealty. The wet boy slid the daggers back into their sheaths, ignoring the twin feeling of relief and despair he felt. It's that damned woman. She's ruined me. She's ruined everything. Blind saw the amber bush from 50 paces away and walked right into his teeth. The sun was still an hour from rising, and the only people on the twisting streets of the Warrens were merchants who'd fallen asleep where they shouldn't have and were hurrying home to their wives. The guild, Black Dragon, from the guild glyphs he'd passed, was hiding around a narrow choke point in the alley, where gill rats could spring up to clock both ends of the street and also attack from the low rooftops. He had affected a bad right knee and pulled his cloak tight around his shoulders. The hood pulled low over his face as he limped into the trap. One of the older children, a big, as they called him, jumped into the alley ahead of him and whistled, brandishing a rusty saber. Gill rats surrounded the wet boy. Clever, Durso said. You keep a lookout before dawn when most of the other gills are sleeping, and you are able to jump a few bags who've been out all night whoring. They don't want to explain any bruises from fighting to their wives, so they hand over their coins. Not bad. Whose idea was that? ASOS, a big said, pointing past the wet boy. Shut up, Roth, the guildhead said. The wet boy looked at the small boy on the rooftop. He was holding a rock aloft, his pale blue eyes intent, ready. He looked familiar. Oh, now you're giving him away, Durso said. You shut up too, the guildhead said, shaking the saber at him. Hand over your purse or we'll kill you. Jalil, a black gill rat said. He called them bags. A merchant wouldn't know we call him that. He's Sakage. Shut up, y'all, we need this. Jalil coughed and spat blood. Just give us your... I don't have time for this. Move, Dursor said. Hand it. The wet boy darted forward, his left hand twisting Jalil's sword hand, snitching the saber and his body spinning in. His right elbow cracked against the guild head's temple, but he pulled the blow so it wouldn't kill. The fight was over by the time the gill rats flinched. I said, I don't have time for this, Durso said. He threw back his hood. He knew he was nothing special to look at. He was lanky and sharp-featured, with dark blonde hair and a wispy blonde beard over lightly pockmarked cheeks. But he might have had 3 heads from the way children shrank back. "They're so blint," Roth murmured. Rocks rattled to the ground. "They're so blint." The name passed through the gill rats in waves. He saw fear and awe in their eyes. They just tried to mug a legend. He smirked. "Sharpen this." Only an amateur lets his blade rust. He threw the saber into a gutter cluttered with sewage. Then he walked through the mob. They scattered as if he might kill them all. Azoth watched him stride into the early morning's mist, disappearing, like so many other hopes, into the sinkhole of the Warrens. Durso Blint was everything Azoth wasn't. He was powerful, dangerous, confident, fearless. He was like a god. He looked at the whole guild arrayed against him. Even the bigs like Roth and Jalil and Rat. And he'd been amused. Amused. Someday, Azoth swore. He didn't quite dare even think the whole thought, lest Blint sense his presumption. But his whole body yearned for it. Someday. When Blint was far enough away not to notice, Azoth followed. Chapter 4. The Bashas guarding the 9 subterranean chamber eyed Durso sourly. They were twins, and 2 of the biggest men in the Sarkage. Each had a lightning bolt tattooed down his forehead. "Weapons," one said. "Lefty," Durso said in greeting, removing his sword. 3 daggers, the dart strapped to his wrist, and a number of small glass balls from his other arm. "I'm Lefty," the other one said, patting down Blint vigorously. "You mind?" Durso asked. "We both know if I wanted to kill anyone in there I could, with or without weapons." Lefty flushed. "Why don't I ram this pretty sword?" "What Lefty means is, why don't you pretend not to be a threat, and we'll pretend we're the reason." Bernard said, "It's a formality, Blint, like asking someone how they are when you don't care." "I don't ask." "I was sorry to hear about Vonda," Bernard said. Durso stopped cold, a lance twisting through his guts. "Really?" the big man said. He held the door open, glanced at his brother. Part of Durso knew he should say something cutting, or threatening or funny, but his tongue was leaden. Master Blint," Bernard said. Recovering, Durso stepped into the 9's meetings room without raising his eyes. So this big, tough guy, still affected by Vonda. It was a place to inspire fear, carved from black fireglass. A platform dominated the room. 9 chairs sat on the platform. A 10th chair sat above them like a throne. There was only bare floor facing the chairs. Those the 9 interviewed would stand. The chamber was a tight rectangle. Let's try that again. Rectangle. But it was deep. The ceiling was so high, it disappeared into the darkness. It gave those questioned the feeling of being interrogated in hell. That, the chairs, walls, and even the floor were carved with little gargoyles, dragons, and people all screaming, did nothing to cool the effect. But Durso walked in with an easy familiarity. The night held no terrors for him. The shadows welcomed his eyes, hid nothing from him. At least that much is left me. The 9 had their cowls on, except for Mama Kay. Though most knew there were no hiding their identities from Durso, above them, the Shinga, Brent Weeks, sat in his throne. He was as still and silent as usual. Is the wife dead? Corbinfield asked. He was a fashionable, handsome man with a reputation for cruelty, especially toward those children in the guilds he managed. The laughter, his lips, might have provoked somehow dried up under the ever-present malice on his face. Things aren't as you expected, Durso said. He gave his report briefly. The king would soon die, and the men whom the Sarkage had feared would try to succeed him would not press their claim. That left the throne to Alain Gunder, who was too weak to dare interfere with the Sarkage. I would suggest, Durso said, that we make the prince promote General Aegon to Lord General. Aegon would keep the prince from consolidating his power, and if Calidor makes any move. The tiny former slave master interrupted. While we acknowledge your complaint against Calidor, Master Blint, we aren't to squander our political capital on some general. We don't have to, Mama Kay said. The Mistress of Pleasures was still beautiful, though it had been years since she was the city's most celebrated courtesan. We can get what we want by pretending someone else asked for it. Everyone stopped and listened. The prince was willing to buy off the general with a political marriage. So we tell him that Aegon's price is a political appointment instead. The general won't ever know, and the prince isn't likely to ask about it. And that gives us leverage to reopen the slavery issue, the slave master said. I'll be damned if we turn slavers again, another said. He was a big man, gone fat, with heavy jowls, small eyes, and scarred fist, befitting the master of the Sarkage's bashers. That conversation can wait. Blint doesn't need to be here for that, Corbin Fischel said. He turned his heavy-lidded eyes to Blint. You didn't kill tonight. He let the statement hang unadorned. Durso looked at him, refusing to take the provocation. Can you still do it? Words were useless with a man like Corbin Fischel. He spoke the language of meat. Durso walked to him. Corbin didn't flinch, didn't turn aside as Durso came toward the platform. Though several of the 9 were clearly nervous. Under Fischel's velvet trousers, Blint could see his muscle bunch. Corbin kicked at Durso's face, but Durso had already moved. He slammed a needle deep into Corbin's calf and stepped back. A bell rang, and a moment later, Bernard and Lefty burst into the room. Blint crossed his arms and made no move to defend himself. Blint was tall, but his mass was all lean muscle and sinew. Lefty charged like a warhorse. Durso merely extended both hands unclenched. But when Lefty crashed into him, the impossible happened. Instead of crushing the smaller man, Lefty's sprint ended instantly. His face stopped first, his nose popping against Durso's open hand. The rest of him continued forward. His body lifted parallel to the ground, then crashed to the stone floor. Stop! Corbin Fischel shouted. Bernard skidded to a halt in front of Durso and then knelt by his brother. Lefty was moaning. His bleeding nose filled the mouth of a rat carved into the rock floor. Corbin pulled the needle out of his calf with a grimace. What is this, Blint? You want to know if I can still kill? Durso put a small vial in front of the basher. If that needle was poisoned, this is the antidote. But if the needle wasn't poisoned, the antidote will kill you. Drink it or don't. Drink it, Corbin, Brent Weeks said. It was the first time the Shinga had spoken since Blint entered. You know, Blint, you would be a better wet boy if I didn't know you were the best. You are, but you still take your orders from me. The next time you touch one of my 9, there will be consequences. Now get the hell out. The tunnel felt wrong. Azoth had been in other tunnels before. And if he wasn't exactly comfortable with moving through the cloying dark by touch, he could still do it. This tunnel had started out. No, Corbin. Not Corbin Dallas. No. Corbin. Not that Corbin. It's not Corbin Dallas. This tunnel had started out like any other, rough cut, winding, winding, and of course dark. But as it plunged deeper into the earth, the walls got straighter, the floor smoother. This tunnel was important. But that was different, not wrong. What was wrong was one step in front of Azoth. He squatted on his heels, resting, thinking. He didn't sit. He squatted on his heels, resting. You only sat when you knew there was nothing you had to run from. He couldn't smell anything different, though the air was as heavy and thick as gruel down here. If he squinted, he thought he could see something. But he was pretty sure that was just from squeezing his eyes. He extended his hand again. Was the air cooler just there? Then he was sure he felt the air shift. Sudden fear arched through Azoth. Blint had passed through here 20 minutes ago. He hadn't carried a torch. Azoth hadn't thought about it then. Now he remembered the stories. A little puff of sour air lapped at his cheek. Azoth almost ran. But he didn't know which way was safe to run. He had no way to defend himself. The fist kept all the weapons. Another puff touched his other cheek. It smells like garlic. There are secrets in this world, kid, a voice said. Secrets like magical alarms and the identities of the Nine. If you take another step, you'll find one of those secrets. Then 2 nice bashers with orders to kill intruders will find you. Master Blint? Azoth searched the darkness. Next time you follow a man, don't be so furtive. It makes you conspicuous. Whatever that meant, it didn't sound good. Master Blint. He heard laughter up the tunnel, moving away. Azoth jumped to his feet, feeling his soap slip away with the fading laughter. He ran up the tunnel in the dark. Wait! There were no response. Azoth ran faster. A stone grabbed his foot and he fell roughly, skinning his knees and hands on the stone floor. Master Blint, wait! I need to apprentice with you. Master Blint, please. The voice spoke just over him, though when he looked, Azoth could see nothing. I don't take apprentices. Go home, kid. But I'm different. I'll do anything. I've got money. But there was no response. Blint was gone. The silence ached, throbbing, in time with the cuts on Aesop's knees and palms. But there were no help for it. He wanted to cry. But crying was for babies. Aesop walked back to Black Dragon territory as the sky lightened. Parts of the warrens were shaking off their drunken slumber. Bakers were up, and smiths' apprentices were starting forge fires. But the gill rats, the whores, the bashers, and the sneak thieves had gone to sleep. And the cut pursers, cons, sharps, and rest of those who worked the daylight were still asleep. Usually the smells of the warrens were comfortable. There were the permeating smell of the cattle yard, over the more immediate smells of human waste glooping through the wide gutters in every street, to further foul the Plith River, the rotting vegetation from the shallows and backwaters of the slow river, the less sour smell of the ocean when a lucky breeze blew. The stench of the sleeping, never-washed beggars who might attack a gill rat for no reason other than their rage at the world. For the first time to Athos rather than home, the smells denoted filth. Rejection and despair were the vapors rising from every mouldering ruin and shit pile in the warrens. The abandoned mill here, once used for hulling rice, wasn't just an empty building the gill could sleep in. It was a sign. Mills on the west shore would be looted by those who desperate. They'd break past whatever bashers the mill owners hired. It was all garbage and rejection, and Asos was part of it. When he got to the guild home, Asos nodded to the lookout and slipped inside with no attempt of stealth. The guild was used to children getting up to piss in the night, so no one would think he'd been out. If he tried to sneak in, he'd just draw attention to himself. Maybe that was what furtive meant. Lying down in his usual spot next to the window, he slipped between Dollgirl and Jarl. It got cold here, but the floor was flat and there weren't many splinters. He nudged his friend. J.O., you know what furtive means? But Jarl rolled away, grunting. Azoth poked him again, but Jarl wouldn't move. Long night, I guess. Like all the gill rats, Azoth, Jarl, and Dollgirl slept close to each other for warmth. Usually, Dollgirl got the middle because she was small and got cold so easy. But tonight, Jarl and Dollgirl weren't lying close to each other. Dollgirl scooted close and wrapped her arms around him, squeezing tightly. And Azoth was glad for her warmth. A worry gnawed at the back of his mind like a rat, but he was too tired. He slept. Chapter 5. The nightmare started when Azoth woke. "Good morning," Rat said. "How's my favorite little gutter shite?" The glee on Rat's face told Azoth that something was seriously wrong. Wrath and Harelip stood on either side of Rat, almost bursting with excitement. Dolga was gone. Jarl was gone. Jalil was nowhere to be seen. Blinking against the sunlight streaming through the guild's home-torn roof, Azoth stood and tried to orient himself. Either working, scavenging, or just deciding that now would be a good time to be outside. So they seen Rat come in. Roth stood by the back door, and Harelip stood behind Rat, in case Azoth ran for the front door or a window. "Where were you last night?" Rat asked. "I had to piss." "Long piss. You missed the fun." When Rat spoke like that, totally flat, no effect in his voice, Azoth felt a fear too deep to shiver out. Azoth knew violence. He'd seen sailors murdered, had seen prostitutes with fresh scars, had a friend die from a window's beating. Cruelty walked the Warrens, holding hands with poverty and rage. But the dead look in Rat's eyes marked him as more of a freak than Harelip. Harelip had been born without part of his lip. Rat had been born without a conscience. "What did you do?" Azoth asked. "Roth?" Rat lifted his chin at the big. Roth opened the door, said, "Good boy," as if speaking to a dog, and grabbed something. He hauled it inside, and Azoth saw that it was Jarl. Jarl's lips were swollen, both eyes black and so big he could barely see through the slits. He was missing teeth, and he has crushed blood on his face. From where his hair had been pulled so hard his scalp bled. He was wearing a dress. Azoth felt hot and cold tingles on his skin. A rush of blood to his face. He couldn't show Rat weakness. He couldn't move. He turned so he wouldn't throw up. Behind him, Jarl let out a little whimper. "Azo, please. Azo, don't turn away from me. I didn't want." Rat struck him across the face. Jarl fell to the ground and didn't move. "Jarl's mine now," Rat said. "He thinks he'll fight every night, and he will." "For a while," Rat smiled. "But I'll break him. Time's on my side." "I'll kill you. I swear it," Azoth said. "Oh, are you Master Blint's apprentice now?" Rat smiled, as Azoth shot Jarl a look, feeling betrayed. Jarl turned his face to the floor, his shoulders shaking as he cried silently. "Jarl told us all about it, sometime between Roth and Davy, I think. But I'm confused. If Master Blint apprenticed you, why are you here, Azo? You came back to kill me?" Jarl's tears stilled and he turned, grasping at straws. "There were nothing to say. He wouldn't take me," Azoth admitted. Jarl slumped. "Everyone knows he doesn't take apprentices, stupid," Rat said. "So here's the deal, Azo. I don't know what you've done for him, but Jalil's ordered me not to touch you, and I won't. But sooner or later, this will be my guild. Sooner, I think, Ross said. He wiggled his eyebrows at Asos. I have big plans for Black Dragon, Aso, and I won't let you get in my way, Rat said. What do you want from me? Asos' voice came out, thin and reedy. I want you to be a hero. I want everyone who doesn't dare stand up to me themselves to look at you and start to hope. And then I will destroy everything you've done. I will destroy everything you love. I will destroy you so completely that no one will ever defy me again. So do your best. Do your worst. Do nothing at all. I win no matter what. I always do. Asos didn't pay dues the next day. He hoped Rat would hit him, just once. And he'd be off the pedestal. He'd just be another guild rat. But Rat didn't hit him. He raged and swore, his eyes smiling, and told Asos to bring double next time. Of course, he brought nothing. He merely extended an empty hand, as if already beaten. It didn't matter. Rat raged, accused him of defying him, and didn't lay a hand on him. And so it was, every Tuesday, gradually. Asos went back to work and started accumulating coppers to put in Jarl's pack. The days were awful. Rat didn't let Jarl speak to Asos, and after a while, Asos didn't think Jarl even wanted to speak to him. The Jarl he knew disappeared by slow degrees. It didn't even help when they stopped making him wear the dress. The nights were worse. Rat took Jarl every night, while the rest of the guild pretended not to hear. Aesol and Dolgal huddled together in the quiet, punctuated by low weeping afterwards. Asos lay on his back for long hours, plotting elaborate revenge that he knew he'd never carry out. He became reckless, cursing Rat to his face, questioning every order the boy gave, and championing everyone Rat beat. Rat swore, but always with that little smile in his eyes. The littles and the losers in the guild started deferring to Asos and looking at him with worshipful eyes. I see a red coat! Hi, red coat! How are you, dear?
Yes! Yes!
How are you? How's your baby girl? I wanna know. Tell Mama everything. Elise and Ellie, thank you so much for the follow. Rats were back, but always that little smile in his eyes. The littles and the losers in the guild started deferring to Azoth and looking at him with worshipful eyes. Azoth could feel the guilt reaching a critical mass the day two bigs brought him lunch and sat with him on the porch. It was a revelation. Oh, my boy is coming. Sorry about that. Azoth could feel the guilt reaching a critical mass the day two bigs brought him lunch and sat with him on the porch. It was a revelation. He'd never believed that any of the bigs would follow him. Why would they? He was nothing, and then he saw his mistake. He'd never made plans for what to do when Biggs joined him. Across the yard, Jaleel sat, miserable, coughing blood and looking hopeless. I'm so stupid. Rat has been waiting for this. He'd arranged for Azoth to be a hero. He'd even told him. This wasn't going to be a coup. It was going to be a purge. Father, please don't go. Logan Geyer held his father's destrier, ignoring the pre-dawn chill and holding back tears. No, leave it, Duke Geyer told Wendell North, his steward, who was directing servants with chests full of Duke's clothing. But I want 1,000 wool cloaks sent within a week. Use our funds and don't ask for repayment. I don't want to give the king an excuse to say no. He clasped gauntleted hands behind his back. I don't know what shape the garrison stables are in, but I like to have word from Havermere on how many horses they can send before winter. Already done, my lord. On every side, servants were coming and going, loading the wagons that would travel north with provisions and supplies. 100 Gear knights made their own last-minute preparations, checking their saddles, horses, and weapons. Servants who would be leaving their families said hurried goodbyes. Duke Geyer turned to Logan, and just seeing his father in his mail brought tears of pride and fear to Logan's eyes. Son, you are 12 years old. I can fight. Even Master Warden admits that I handle a sword almost as well as the soldiers. Logan, it isn't because I don't believe in your abilities that I'm making you stay. It's because I do. The fact is, your mother needs you here more than I need you in the mountains. But I want to go with you. And I don't want to leave at all. It doesn't have anything to do with what we want. Jason said Niner is trying to embarrass you. He said it's an insult for a duke to be given such a small command. He didn't mention the other things Jason had said. Logan didn't consider himself quick-tempered. But in the 3 months since King David had died, and Elaine Gunder had assumed the title Elaine the Ninth, known condescendingly as Niner, Logan had been in half-dozen fights. And what do you think, son? I don't think you're afraid of anyone. So Jason said I was afraid, did he? Is that where you got the bruises on your knuckles? Logan grinned suddenly. He was as tall as his father, and if he didn't have Ragnar's Gaia's bulk yet, their gods, Master Brent Warden, said it was only a matter of time. When Logan fought other boys, he didn't lose. Son, make no mistake. Commanding the garrison at Screaming Winds is a slight, but it's better than exile or death. If I stay, the king will give me one or the other eventually. Each summer you'll come train with my men, but I need you here too. For half the year you'll be my eyes and ears in Scenaria. Your mother. He broke off and looked past Logan. Thinks your father is a fool, Katrina Gaia said, coming up behind them suddenly. She had been born to another Duracell family, the Graysons, and she had their green eyes, petite features and temper. Despite the early hour, she was dressed in a beautiful green silk dress, edged with ermine, her hair brushed glossy. Ragnus, if you get on that horse, I never want to see you come back. Katrina, we aren't having this discussion again. That jackal will hurl you against my family, you know that. Destroy you, destroy them. He wins, no matter what. This is your family, Katrina. I've made my decision. Duke Gaia's voice carried with a wit crack of a command, an edge that made Logan want to shrink and not be noticed. Which of your harlots are you taking with you? I'm not taking any of the maid servants, Katrina, though some of them will be hard to replace. I'm leaving them here out of respect for your. How stupid do you think I am? You'll just find slots there. Katrina, go inside. Now. She obeyed, and Duke Gaia watched her go. He spoke without turning toward Logan. Your mother. There are things I'll share with you when you're older. For now, I expect you to honor her, but you will be Lord Gaia while I'm gone. Logan's eyes went wide. His father clapped him on the shoulder. That doesn't mean you get to skip your lessons. Wendell will teach you everything you need to know. I swear the man understands more about running our lands than I do. I'm only a 4-day ride away, but you have a fine mind, son, and that's why you have to stay. This city is that viper's nest. There are those who would destroy us. Your mother has seen hints of that, and it's been part of her troubles. I'm gambling with you, Logan. I wish I didn't have to. But you're the only piece I have left to play. Surprise them. Be smarter, better, braver, and faster than anyone expects. It's not a fair burden for me to put on you, but I must. I'm counting on you. House Geyer is counting on you. All our retainers and vassals are counting on you. And maybe even the kingdom itself. Duke Gaia swung up until his huge white destrier. I love you, son, but don't let me down. Oh, wow. That is like, what? The biggest burden to put on a kid? Jesus Christ. Chapter 6. The darkness was as close and cold as the dead's embrace. Azoth squatted against the alley wall, hoping the night wind covered the sound of thunder in his heart. The fifth big who joined him had stolen a sheath from Rat's weapon cache, and Azoth clutched the thin metal so tightly his hand hurt. There was still no motion in the alley. Azoth stuck the blade into the dirt of the alley and put his hands in his armpits to keep them warm. Nothing might happen for hours. It didn't matter. He was running out of chances. He'd wasted too much time, as it was. Rat wasn't stupid. He was cruel, but he had plans. Azoth didn't. He'd been flailing in his fear for 3 months. Flailing when he could have been planning. The fist had declared his intentions. That made it easy enough. Azoth knew some of what he was planning. All he had to do was piece together how. Now, as he thought, he could feel himself slipping into Rat's skin all too easily, thinking Rat's thoughts. A purge isn't good enough. A purge will give me safety for a couple of years. Other guild heads have killed to keep their power. Killing doesn't make me different. Azoth worked on the idea. Rat didn't have small ambitions. Rat had bottled up his hatred for 3 months. Why would he be willing to not even hit Azoth for 3 months? Destruction. That's what it came down to. Rat would destroy him in spectacular fashion. He would sate his own cruelty and advance his power. He would do something so awful that Azoth would become a story the guilds would tell. He might not even kill him, just leave him maimed in some horrific way, so that everyone who met Azoth would fear Rat more. There was a shuffling sound in the alley, and Azoth tensed. Slowly, so slowly, he pulled out the sheath. The alley was tight. The building sagging so close a grown man could touch both walls at the same time. Azoth has chosen it for that reason. He wouldn't let his quarry slip past him. But now the walls seemed malevolent, stretching his fingers toward each other, closing out the stars, grabbing for him. Wind muttering over the roofs, telling tales of murder. Azoth heard the shuffle again and relaxed. A scarred old rat emerged from under a pile of moldering boards and sniffed. Azoth held still as the rat waddled forward. It sniffed at Azoth's bare feet. Nudged him with a wet nose, and sensing no danger, moved forward to feed. Just as the rat moved to bite, Azoth buried the shiv behind its ear and into the ground beneath. It jerked, but didn't squeak. He withdrew the thin iron, satisfied with his stealth. He checked the alley again. Still nothing. So where am I weak? What would I do to destroy me if I were rat? Oh, excuse me. Something tickled his neck, and he brushed it away. Curse the bugs. Bugs! It's freezing out here. His hand came down from his neck, warm and sticky. Azoth turned and lashed out, but the shiv went spinning from his hand as something struck his wrist. There saw Blint, squatted on his heels, not a foot away. He didn't speak. He just stared, his eyes colder than the night. There was a long pause as they stared at each other, neither saying a word. You saw the rat, Azoth did. An eyebrow lifted. You cut me where I cut it. You cut me, so you were showing me that you were as much better than me as I am better than the rat. A hint of a smile. A strange little gill rat you are. So smart, so stupid. Hi, Mommy! Azoth looked at the shiv, now magically in Durzo's hand, and felt ashamed. He was stupid. What had he been thinking? He was going to threaten a wet boy. But he said, I'm going to apprentice with you. Blint's open hand cracked across his face and sent him sprawling into the wall. Blint's His face scraped against the rock and he landed heavily. When he rolled over, Blint was standing over him. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't kill you, Blint said. Doll girl. She wasn't the only answer to Blint's question, she was Azoth's weakness. She was where rat would strike. A wave of nausea swept over Azoth, first Jarl and Raw, now doll girl. You should, Azoth said. Blint raised an eyebrow again. You're the best wet boy in this city, but you're not the only one. And if you won't apprentice me and you don't kill me, I'll train under Hugh Gibbet or Scarred Rabble. I'll spend my life training just for the moment I have my chance at you. I'll wait until you think I've forgotten today. I'll wait until you think it was just a dumb guild rat's threat. After I'm a master, I'll jump at shadows for a while. But after you jump a dozen times, I'm not there. You won't jump just once, and that's when I'll be there. I don't care if you kill me at the same time. I'll trade my life for yours. Durzo's eyes barely had to shift to go from dangerously amused to simply dangerous. But Azoth didn't even see them through the tears brimming in his own eyes. He only saw the vacant look that had come into Jarl's eyes and imagined seeing it in Doll Girl's. He imagined her screams if Rat came and took her every night. She screamed wordlessly for the first few weeks, maybe bite and scratch for a while. And then she wouldn't scream anymore, wouldn't fight at all. There would just be grunting and the sounds of flesh and Rat's pleasure, just like Jarl. Is your life so empty, boy? It will be if you say no. I want to be like you. No one wants to be like me. Blint drew a huge black sword and touched the edge to Asa's throat. In that moment, Asa didn't care if the blade drank his life's blood. Death would be kinder than watching Doll Girl disappear before his eyes. You like hurting people? Blint asked. No, sir. Ever killed anyone? No. Then why are you wasting my time? What was wrong with him? Did he really mean that? He couldn't. I heard you don't like it, that you don't have to like it to be good, Asa said. Who told you that? Mama Kay. She said that. It's the difference between you and some of the others. Blint frowned. He pulled a clove of garlic from a pouch and popped it into his mouth. He sheathed his sword, chewing. All right, kid. You want to get rich? Asath nodded. You are quick, but can you tell what your marks are thinking and remembering 50 things at once? Do you have good hands? Nod, nod, nod. Be a gambler, Durso laughed. Asath didn't. He looked at his feet. I don't want to be afraid anymore. Jalil beats you? Jalil's nothing. Then who is? Blint asked. Our fist, Rat. Why is it so hard to say his name? He beats you. Unless you'll do things with him. It sounded weak, and Blint didn't say anything. So Aether said, I won't let anyone beat me again. Not ever. Blint kept looking past Asos, giving him time to blink away his tears. The full moon bathed the city in golden light. The old whore can be beautiful, he said, despite everything. Asos followed Blint's gaze, but there was no one else in sight. Silver mist rose from the warm manure of the cattle yards and coiled around old broken aqueducts. In the darkness, Azoth couldn't see the bleeding man freshly scrawled over his own guild's black dragon, but he knew it was there. His guild has been losing territory steadily since Jalil got sick. Sir, Azoth said, this city's got no culture but street culture. The buildings are brick on one street, daub and wattle the next, and bamboo one over. Titles: Elitarian, clothes, Kaleen, music, all city harps and Lodrikari lyres. The damn rice paddies themselves stolen from Syra. But as long as you don't touch her or look too close, sometimes she's beautiful. Azor thought he understood. You had to be careful what you touched and where you walked in the warrens. Pools of vomit and other bodily fluids were splattered in the streets, and the dung fueled fires and fatty steams from the constantly boiling tallows. Vats covered everything with its greasy, sooty sheen. But he had no reply. He wasn't even sure Blint was talking to him. You are close, boy, but I never take apprentices, and I won't take you. Blint paused and idly spun the sheath from finger to finger. Not unless you do something you can't. Hope burst into life in Asa's breast for the first time in months. I'll do anything, he said. You'd have to do it alone. No one else could know. You'd have to figure out how, when, and where, all by yourself. What do I have to do? Asa asked. He could feel the Night's Angels curling their fingers around his stomach. Blint picked up the dead rat and threw it to Asath. Just this. Kill your rat and bring me proof. You've got a week. Oh my, oh my, oh my. That was the end of chapter 6, guys. So, this is the new stream schedule, guys, and I'm planning on reading in the early hours. I've missed it, and I know a lot of you guys have missed it. And hopefully it can be something everyone can benefit from, guys. So, the early streams will be Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. CET. So we will be reading there, guys. The book is actually in the title, my dear. It's called The Way of Shadows. It's by Brent Weeks. So I will be reading Tuesdays and Thursdays, guys. I might do it all week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, but it won't be in the early hours. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Spoony! Monday, Wednesday, and Friday will be at 3 p.m. When I come home from work. So
Yes! Yes!
I might do a readings there as well, but I might do that as a different book. So Tuesday and Thursday will be this book, The Way of Shadows, and then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday will be a different book. Go sleep. No, seriously, I sleep way too much now after the second COVID shot, vaccine shot. So what do you guys think of that plan? So Tuesday and Thursday would be this book, and then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday will be a second book. So we keep the same stories on the same times.
I'd like picture books only, please. Oh, Craig. I will let you, if you can find a book, I will, like a fantasy book, I will let you pick one quick that we can read Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Sounds good to keep it on the same days? Yeah, so Tuesday and Thursday will be this book, and then the rest of the week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday will be a different book. Yeah. So you can chime in on the days on the books that you guys want to listen to. I've been missing reading for you guys. I really have. So and Indian picture book. Since I am gonna end the stream now, because this is a short stream here in the morning hours with the reading, also to spare my voice. I will be back later at 8:30 tonight. The Infernal City. What is that? The Infernal City? Is that a fantasy book? ESO. You want ESO? Okay. Well, if I can find it as an online book. Yes. I just Googled it, sweetie. I will see if I can find it online. And I can read that on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. How does that sound? You like the plan? Yeah? Don't jump ship on the way of the shadows, though. No. I'm gonna read that Tuesday and Thursday, and then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we can read the ESO novel book. So we're gonna have 2 books, but since I'm starting at 3 p.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I think that would be suitable for a different book, so that you guys that are listening in the mornings will have the same book and not miss out on the other, if you know what I mean. So it will be 2 books, 2 different books, but on the different days. Mm-hmm. Book club with Mila. Well, it's for you guys that are sitting and working at home or have the opportunity to actually sit and listen to a like a podcast while you're working. I know that the bear, he loves doing that, and so does Simmons and Ginger. So last week you were at home. Yeah, I know, but I know you were always listening when I was reading last time. So I picked this up again because I know you guys been missing it and have been missing it, and I finally found a book. Well, actually, I stole it from my boy's room, so don't tell him that. So So, guys, should we raid a World of Warship streamer or an ESO streamer or Mama's Angels won't say a thing? Oh, Pripsy, I love you. So we can raid Hedy. We can raid Sururu. Or ESO is trolling you on fishing? Oh. Or we can raid Viking Trash. Actually, let's do that. I've never raided Viking Trash, so. Guys, it has been amazing to read for you yet again. So, but for now, I will see you guys later. Please follow over for the raid, guys. It will help a lot for me. Stay for the raid, guys, please. That will be amazing. So I will try to find the ESO novel, guys. And hopefully have it ready for tomorrow. So you guys take care, and I will see you later tonight, okay? For some ESO rating. So good night. Or not good night. See you later. See, I'm not used to streaming in the day, early mornings anymore. I will see you later, guys. Have great days at work, and Bear, it was so great to see you. Seriously, that made my day. So, mwah, you all make my day. I love you, and I will see you later.
Much for the raid. Welcome in raiders. Definitely go check out Dark Raid and give them a follow. Click their name when they appear in chat, if they appear in chat.